It's 10:01, so want to welcome everybody to our first full network meeting of the Family and Community Engagement Network. In a few months, we've done some great professional learning along the way, but haven't had as much time to kind of share our work and give some updates with our community here. So really looking forward to getting into that today. We got a jam-packed agenda and the sun's peeking out. So at least in Central Ohio. So hopefully going to be a good day. Just want to say hello again, and if you wanted, I see people have already been throwing hellos and greetings and salutations in the chat. Feel free to keep on doing that and catch up with any colleagues you haven't seen in a while. Go ahead and say hello if you'd like to. Now, really quickly for what we're going to do today. Hopefully you got the agenda last week, and then it's all of our meeting materials for today, including the agenda, as well as other things we're going to be working in. And this slide deck are on Ohio's familyengage.osu.edu. And if you find that FCE network tab and type in the password, network member, all lowercase, you'll be able to access all of these materials, including the agenda for today. But you might notice we got a lot of updates today. We haven't been together in kind of a long form capacity in a while. So we're going to get to hear from all the great work that's going on in and outside of these meetings. We're going to hear from our partners, but we are also going to continue our conversation in equity and coaching for equity. And we're going to do that right this time by reflecting on equity and special education. Hopefully you were able to hear Joyce's story, or might be able to sneak it in on a break here, because we are going to be discussing Joyce's experience and kind of the complex circumstances that played out in her story. So I'm looking forward to that and continuing our learning on that subject. We'll also receive a pretty cool presentation from our friends at O'Callaghan then too. We'll do some, and then in the afternoon, we'll do some more updates and we'll adjourn. So today will be a lot of learning, a lot of sharing, and hopefully we'll be able to take something back to our regions. So with that, we always like to get moving in the morning. I don't know who's had their coffee and who hasn't, but we're going to get into some small breakout groups for a couple minutes, and hopefully have an opportunity to discuss your coaching conversations, or how your coaching conversations may have evolved since we've been doing this professional development series the last couple months and really focusing on equity, race, and education. So I'm wondering if you've integrated any of the conversations that we've had into your work or into conversations with some of your colleagues in your regions, and if you might be able to share kind of how that's played out over the last couple months. Also feel free to catch up, but we're going to kind of focus around this question. So if everybody's good to go, I'm going to go ahead and set up these breakout rooms and we'll get started. We're going to be out here for, kind of probably around 8 to 10 minutes. So welcome back, friends and colleagues alike. I hope you had a great conversation. I hope you had enough time to chit chat a little bit. I would love if anyone had any kind of real profound things that they heard in their group to call out and celebrate their colleagues in the chat there, people going above and beyond. Feel free to do that and keep doing that throughout as well. We're going to move ahead though, because we got big day planned. And we're going to start right off the bat with our early literacy family engagement resources work group. Now, before I turn it right over to Heidi to share their slides in a second, I did want to show you one thing that we will be using throughout the day. If you navigate to our Ohio Families Engage .osu.edu website, go to the FCE section. We're going to be getting updates from all the work groups this today, starting with the early literacy work group. And just as an idea catcher, if things come up throughout the meetings, now work groups might have brought their own strategies to collect information, so feel free to follow throughout the conversation. But if you did have thoughts, feedback, something to share with the work group, and you didn't feel comfortable either calling it out or putting in the chat or something, but just wanted to have a place to put it, we did create a Google Doc here that just says feedback form for work group updates. And when you click that, takes you right to a Google Doc. We all worked in those, right? And there's kind of just a page per work group. So at any time, just feel free to throw notes in there if you have feedback for a work group, and we'll make sure that every one of the kind of work groups gets to see that stuff afterwards. So hopefully people are going to utilize that, but I'm going to stop talking because we have big time updates here from our early literacy and family engagement work group. So I'll hand it off to Heidi and her team now.
John, we've got the agenda.
We have the agenda. Okay, let me
Yeah.
share again. Sorry.
We don't have your share yet.
Okay, I'm going to present then. Sorry about, and everybody can hear me?
Heidi, it's a little soft, and if you want to go in present mode, they might be able to see that a little easier.
Got the right view up? Good?
Yeah.
All right, so welcome, and we're going to be talking about the family engagement and early literacy rubric update. Carrie Wood and I, say hi, Carrie. And we are really excited because we are ready to launch this out to the state. And we're hoping that you will all be a part of our mission control and y'all have a role to play. So I know that we've looked at this before, and so there's going to be some learner variability in the room. So in the chat, if at a 1, no, I haven't yet looked at the family engagement rubric, and a 5, Heidi, I've been out and shared this with districts. Can I get some feedback in the chat of where you are in being a part of sharing this out? Some of you are first steps. So for some of you, it's going to be a first step, and some of you have at least looked at this. So we'll try to keep that in mind as we go through this. And so with that being said, I'm going to have Carrie talk to you just to give you an overview about the rubric.
So good morning, everyone, and welcome today. My name is Carrie Wood. I am a RELS at SST 7 in Mansfield, Ohio with Heidi. And I have to acknowledge that the hard work on this rubric was done by a work group for which I didn't participate until just this year when all the hard work was done. So Meredith and Jen Griffing and Thomas and Heidi and another consultant at our SST, Ed Capel, and of course, Dr. Barbara Boone were They were working on this while I was still at the ESC. So I am a newbie at SST7, although they've been part of my learning family for a long time. And I'm getting to know this family well. So Dr. Boone and Hadley Buckman have been helping our CLSD awardees in Region 7 layer some equity on our work with families, and they've been helping our group in that way. So I talked a little bit about that with my friends in the breakout room. But what we've done in this rubric, and I see a lot of 1s and 2s. I asked Meredith, and she did put the link in the chat if you want to go ahead and look at that, certainly afterwards and during breakout session. But basically, this sums up what we've done with this rubric. Is we've poured language and literacy into all of the 6 key areas of Epstein. And so in any one of these places, you might find a home for your entry point in launching this work. And as Heidi said, we want to, consider all of us as mission control, but this really is helpful in terms of giving a practical, easy but informative and rich way to start to gauge family engagement beyond just the lip service that a lot of districts say that they have. And it's aligned directly to the lever that Ohio has in Ohio's plan to raise literacy achievement. So we just want to talk today, kind of piggybacking on an activity that Heidi told me about, that you've had an opportunity to give feedback on this rubric before, although some of you, like me, may be new to the group. And so there is a little bit of variability here, like Heidi said, but we're interested in you kind of taking one last look at it. And we're really interested in knowing how we can support you, but also can you give us some more feedback before we launch this? But we do want to support you in your role. So considering these 6 key areas, I have a bucket for each one. I'm going to show you a little piece of just one of those buckets, but understanding that the language and literacy has been poured into each one of those. And so if that's not your comfort zone for your entry point and launching this tool, maybe it's one of these 6 areas here. And then together we're hoping to brainstorm some more ways that would give everyone a place to feel comfortable to enter this work. Okay, next slide. So not that we can't say this enough, but engagement, entails some things like commitment and synchronization and working together. That's why we're, kind of saying you're mission control with us. Support, but mostly action, right? We want to go beyond just that lip service, but mostly action. And it's through engagement with families and schools and communities that Ohio will receive the support they need for their bright future. We don't see this disconnected from language and literacy at all. And I know I'm preaching to the choir. And so it's just one more way to be intentional about saying it. So the essential question I'd like you to keep in your mind as we're talking about this briefly is, how will you engage in this work to launch this tool in your role? And so I just took one of the buckets of communication. And if you haven't seen the rubric before, this is what it looks like on the right. And I don't know if I'm using my cursor that you can see it, but I don't know if Heidi, you can kind of call attention to things I might do on the screen. But I've just pulled out one of the levels, but the rubric is constructed so the levels are to the left, and then in each level, there are bullet points that are criterion that accordion the authentic engagement with families. And as you go up in levels, then you would ramp up that engagement. So I just pulled out level 3. And very quickly, you can see in the bolded section where that pouring of language and literacy went into this bucket of communication. So right away, like REMP, you can see that in bold, the 5 ideas of reading and the school-wide literacy plan. And so part of this work might be that you enter in on the language and literacy. So when we talk about a REMP, it's been my feeling for years that we've needed to give it more than just the cursory parent signature. And you'll see there are ways in this rubric in resources that I'll explain that are coming to you soon that will make available some ideas for how to do that. And so that truly parents could be partners in helping us close those gaps in language and literacy. And all the more do we need that, right? I mean, now that we've been charged with planning out how we're going to close that gap in extending learning, and schools have to submit that plan, and then communicating the 5 big ideas of reading that line up with our foundational standards in our outlined in our simple view of reading theoretical models, in the content to raise the plan to raise literacy. And then also, I'll call your attention to the school-wide literacy plan. A lot of our schools are gauging their systems using some of the work out of Michigan with My MTSS, which is formerly My Blissy. And we have an RTFI that lays out a school-wide literacy plan. And all these things align, they all go together. One more thing that you might find an entry point in related to language and literacy is the dyslexia legislation that's coming about. And of course, we won't know details until the committee comes out with a guidebook and some of the compliance pieces and implementation pieces in those buckets of legislation. But I wanted to assure you, and I was on the call with Jen Griffin this morning, and she said, you know, really, this isn't anything separate. I concur with that. It all aligns. You may hear a different term like structured literacy, but it's all the science of reading that we've been learning about in Ohio's plan, and maybe some of your work here in this community with language and literacy. And so maybe that'll provide an entry point to some of this work. But family engagement is key in that legislation. And it does go beyond the cursory, I'm just going to dispense some information to you and then you sign a paper. Truly, they have some power in that stakeholder place that they should hold in this work. Or maybe you might enter this in through UDL. Jim was explaining that she had used UDL and applied that to this work because it was something they knew well. And it really helped connect the dots so that framework is always infused in what we do, and we can layer it on family engagement, just like some of the new work that the center is doing with MTSS, and differentiating for our students and kind of applying all the things that we know about that framework and that evidence-based practice and that system work on top of family engagement. So we really would like to kind of utilize your brainstorming around that today. And so some things that are coming that Thomas alluded to, not only the tool that we'd like to launch, but we now have videos that support kind of like a coach in your pocket, and we'll take a building team through the logistics of going through the tool. We'll suggest pause and ponder points. There are resources attached to each one of these key areas as each individual team member kind of looks through the criterion and does a self-assessment. And then as a team kind of puts that all together in a rich discussion. There's a place to take notes. There are coaching questions along the way. And that work will be recorded. And that's what I love about it is there's some accountability to the action steps that are recorded in that plan. And so you'll be able to utilize these videos, whether they be Zoom recordings or Loom videos, as your coach in the pocket as you choose to work through this rubric. And you can dip in at any place, or you can work through it chronologically, how it's ordered in there. It's really up to you. It's flexible. There were even some teams that were considering maybe thinking about adding some preschool specific items on the criterion. And so we want you to let us know as you're using this tool, are there some things that you would suggest or some other resources that you've come across that you'd like us to add in? But those will be coming soon, and you'll have, like I said, a little coach in your pocket for preparing those teams to work through the tool. And then Heidi's going to provide some more detail for this, but I have that little rocket ship. We really kind of want to use that as our theme as we launch, and you are with us at Mission Control. And so Houston, we have a problem. We want to know about it, but we also want to be proactive today and just giving you one more chance to kind of help us with launching it and where you see this fitting and some ideas maybe we've not thought about, but also how can we support you? So if you're not comfy with some of the language and literacy stuff, we want you to reach out to us so we can help you. So this were just some norms. We do expect to turn on your webcam, and just like we did in breakouts, I mean, we seem very comfortable with one another, so we might not need to hear this. And you will have several minutes to discuss the questions, and Heidi will talk to you more about the questions. And just so you know, I am scheduled to present in a few minutes, so I may not get to see all the great feedback in real time, but please be certain that I will honor your work and consider it and take it in with me. So thank you for your help today, and I'll hand it off to Heidi.
So yeah, just to get us starting thinking, like, how are you working with families and supporting language and literacy, and what are some ideas that you have for enhancing that? So if in the chat you could just quickly try to think about, like, hey, this is something that I've done to help support language and literacy in families. I know one of the things that I've done is when a district has contacted me, you know, they're working on their one needs assessment, and they're like, we need some, how do we collect some data regarding family engagement? I have turned them onto this rubric and said, this is a great way to collect some baseline data and create an action plan and get your a quick self-assessment if one of your ITs is family engagement and literacy. So that's one idea that I've used with this rubric. And so I don't know what you guys are all doing in the field to support family engagement and literacy, but if you could, like, give us some ideas of some things that you're doing, that would be super awesome. We'd love to hear what you guys are all doing. And if anybody wants to unmute their mic because they're like, I'm rocking it out and this is something I've done, that would be great as well. I love Kim's doing a book study. That's super awesome. Anybody want to unmute?
I'll unmute.
Okay, great. Thanks.
So one of the things that we're doing is the community-wide to enhance learning with families, as well as that we're actually, we've created what's called Kid Care Kits. And within there, we have, actually I'm working with Jen's working, we're doing this collectively. And so we actually distributed out 500 of those kits just recently. We started with 300 in the summer. We came back and we leveled up to provide additional resources. And so these are getting into the hands of community workers, Help Me Grow, those that are working with parents that are part of Thrive. And so it's got some great resources that will walk alongside families to support language and literacy. And so we're super excited about it. I have a kit right here. It's got a bunch of things in there. So we're going to be getting those out to some additional families, as well as our EL families. So thanks.
Thank you for sharing, Krista. I appreciate that. And so basically, I know that everybody's kind of coming into this from different lenses and from different ideas of where they are on this family engagement rubric. So we're only going to give you like 8 to 10 minutes in a breakout room, but we really want you to use, I created an ideas board and I'm popping those, I think, into the chat. And so you're going to either be in breakout 1, 2, or 3. We're going to be in 3 different breakout rooms. And basically, we just want to get, then the questions you don't have to like worry about taking from the previous slide because they're right there on the ideas board. And it's a nice little collaborative board. And if you just hit the plus sign next to the thing, it'll automatically add a sticky note. And so if you could just add, you know, one person be a facilitator, one person be a timekeeper, because it's going to be pretty quick. And then one person can agree to report out for us. But we'd like for you to try to put something in each one of those things. And we need to know what support you need and ideas of how to get this out, because we really want to launch it and we want it to be usable. And we want to get, you know, we have this great mission control with all of you, and you each have a role to play. And we want to know how we can support you and get this rolled out so we can launch it across the state. So with that being said, Tom, are you putting us in breakout rooms of 3? And you'll notice in the chat, if you go to breakout room 1, you'll go to ID word 1. If you're in breakout room 2, you'll go to that, and etc. So that's in the chat. So you'll just click on that link and then you'll work through that. So with that being said, Tom gives us 8 to 10 minutes.
Sure. Here we go.
So welcome back, everyone. And I would just ask if group 1 would be willing to share out just some of the highlights from their group.
I can share, but I'm also happy for other people in our group to share. There was a lot of good conversation. Anyone else? No other takers. Okay, so we talked about a number of things. We were having a really good discussion at the very end that got cut a little short about how some people in this FCE network who are not on SSTs, how they could, so other community or state level partners, how they can weave this tool into their work. And then another common theme that came up in the what help and support, I guess I'm kind of going backwards, but what help or support do you need? Several mentioned some more time to familiarize themselves with this tool. And there was kind of a cross, also an idea for using it in a workshop with this network so that we can kind of get a practice using it. And perhaps that's been something that was done in the past, but those of us who are newer don't remember that. And then there were lots of ideas for how to share it, adding it to monthly newsletters, adding it to website resources, a tweet, sharing it on social medias, adding a data tool for root cause analysis for the one needs assessment, asking FCE network members to put it on the agenda. So lots of ideas. So I think, and then as a side note, I really enjoyed idea boards, and we'll use it in the future. That was nice and easy to use.
Thank you, Hadley. Could we have somebody from group 2?
Sure, I'll share. So in group 2, we talked about ideas of how we could use this. Is that we loved how it was aligned to the NNPS work, because we think that sometimes, NNPS plans get very broad, and so that this will help to guide them to be more specific in some ideas that really can fit into their plans. This could use to help support and coaching for the P4L districts. And so I think it's another tool to help guide districts in implementing both literacy into their family engagement. Ideas to share. We said there's lots of coaching sessions that are happening. Share within our literacy network. So a lot of us had networks or NICs that were happening now with some of the CLSD grants and other literacy networks in our region. So getting them shared in there. And then sharing them as the elementaries are working on their one needs assessment to use that rubric to really guide their work on that one needs assessment. We said really where we need the help or support, or where we need to go next is getting this information to the rest of the SSTs. So in our regional meetings, maybe in our quads, or just in our in my region 13 meeting, because I don't work with early literacy very often at all. So making sure that everyone else knows it's out there, what it does, how to use it, we think will be very helpful, to take our capacity and share it with the rest of our divisions. I think that was all. Let me double check. Yep, I think we're good. Anybody want to add anything?
And then Jen's going to share for our group 3. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, no problem. So I think a lot of common things that our group discussed that we've already kind of heard, but as far as ideas on how to use it in your work, using it at a family engagement network. I'm sorry, my dog is going to be right here. Family engagement network as a resource to share. So if you an event coming up with your family network and using it there, using it with the One Needs assessment, sharing it with other consultants, and with that sharing with other consultants is gathering some feedback. So those are some ideas we had for how it could be used in our work. Again, ideas for sharing it with your LEAs. Again, I think we've heard some of these things already. You know, what are some of those meetings and events that are already happening? The BLT meetings or meetings with principals, and then sharing it networks. Someone had mentioned putting it in their newsletter update, just so that it's always current and available, so that it can be shared and explored at any time, including it also with county meetings with ESC staff. And then as far as help to support, so a lot of things we talked about is what could be available for people as they're starting to use this tool. So setting up a Q&A time, like office hours, where questions could come in and there could be assistance that's right there and ready and available for the consultants. Of course, looking at the coaching videos and really encouraging people to check those out. And then also just ideas on what to do if people are struggling in processing the rubric. So again, kind of being able to have a place to go so that you can keep things going. And then we briefly talked about how can we learn from the experiences of others who are using the tools. Like, what are some of the best practices that might help support people who are just getting started? I think I covered everything. Okay.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you all for your feedback. And basically just know that these 3 idea boards, our committee, our group will look at them, and we will try to create an action plan to support all of you and get these ideas out. And in the meantime, like, please feel free to contact me if you're like, hey, Heidi, I'm thinking about using this rubric, but I need a little bit of scaffolding. Like, I'm here to help and support you, I know, as well as the rest of the team here. So thank you so much for your feedback. I really appreciate it. And I'm hoping that together we can launch this out to the state. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Heidi, and thank you, Carrie, for presenting your great work. This has been a long time coming, and I've gotten to work on this project off and on quite a bit. And I have to say, I think if you get into conversation with schools or districts and you're getting into needs assessment or root cause conversations, and you're really thinking about how to change literacy practice to include families, improve learning at home, improve communication, this is a strong tool to help guide that conversation. So just something to think about, as I think Megan's group pointed out, and everyone, the needs assessment is going on right now. So if things are coming up, just another tool in the toolbox. Thank you again for sharing. Okay, that was big. That was exciting. That was a great job, everybody. So moving on with the meeting, and I also would encourage people, if they continue to have things come to mind, to share them in the chat, share them on kind of our places that we've reserved to share ideas today. Always welcome and always willing to improve. But with that, I hope you can see my PowerPoint. We're going to be moving into some updates from our partners. And so I want to reserve all the time for that. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Lindsay Havey from the Office of Exceptional Children. If you're here, I'm going to invite you to make some announcements.
Yep, I'm here. Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all doing well and that your snow is melting like mine is. I do have several updates to share on behalf of the Office for Exceptional Children. So I'm going to jump right in. First up, I have the Indicator 8 Special Education Family Survey. There's been some email communication from OSU with directions for disseminating the survey that's going to go out to the Cohort 2 districts this week. And the survey window is going to open March 1st. And I believe it's open until April 30th. So it sounds like we'll be getting the next group going here very soon. Alternate assessment, family FAQ documents. We are working on those 3 family FAQs. I think that I've brought those up before in an update, but they are in the areas of participation, assessment, and the third one is extensions and instruction. So the FAQs were recently reviewed by the National Center for Educational Outcomes and also OCALI, and they'll be moving through the layers of approval. We'll be excited to share those once they're ready to go. I think those will be a very helpful list of FAQs that everyone can share out. And then the next update, actually, I'm going to be asking for your input on. It's regarding the surrogate parent training. And I know you all have interest in that. They're still working on stakeholder feedback, but they're hoping that this project will be able to wrap up and be ready to go sometime in the later spring. But they wanted to, the people that are working on this wanted to get your input as well as important stakeholders for this. So there's going to be an opportunity for you all in this group to provide feedback on the actual PowerPoint slides and the training itself. So I'm going to put in the chat 3 possible date options that have been put out there. And what we'll do is schedule a 1-hour feedback session for the date with that most of you respond back if you want to. This is optional. So if you can put in the chat, respond back what the date is that you might be interested in. We would love to invite you to a feedback session just for members of this group. And that would be beyond just our SST consultants. If there are others who would like to come, please feel free to respond back. And then we'll send out the invite. We'll get that scheduled. Okay, so moving on with my updates. I have an update from Amy Szymanski that I believe you all have got my email. There's a training for regional SST consultants for the new Establishing Families as Partners in the Secondary Planning Process, which is a series of 7 trainings starting March 8th. If you did not get an email invite from me and that is something that you would be interested in, please just let me know. I'd be happy to forward that information to you, or you could reach out to Amy Szymanski and she would also be able to connect you with the links to register for that. So it looks like after this first round of training, there and feedback from the group that attends that, there will be planning for what the local training will look like. And that's going to be kind of in the May timeframe. So that is the update from Amy. And then I do have a couple of updates to share from our family engagement team at OEC. A couple regarding parent mentors. We are working on adding some more grant positions for the urban districts. Not all of them have a parent mentor. So right now, Akron, Lima, Toledo, and Zanesville are working on filling positions. And we are hoping that next year, Dayton and Youngstown will come on board so that there would then be a parent mentor across all 11 of the urban districts. And just because I get asked a lot, I did look. So at that time, if we include everybody through Dayton and Youngstown, there would be 82 grants that ODE is giving out annually for those, and that the total number of parent mentors will go past 100. So that's really exciting. It'll be, I think, 102 if my math is correct. So pretty cool and nice to see that program growing. So, oh, and then I have a link. I'm going to put that in the chat as well. If you're not sure where there are parent mentors in your region, because sometimes things do change, there is a really great tool that OCECD, it's not a tool, it's a list by county of family assistants. So it has parent mentors. It also has you all as SST family engagement leads, and then it also has the OCECD staff in that region. And I find myself referring to that quite a bit. So I think that's a great listing that they have, and they're really good about keeping it updated. Other parent mentor news is that this year we offered a one-time only resource mini grant that parent mentors could apply for of up to $2,000 to look at the needs of their families and the just different needs of their programs, with this year just being so different, and all of our jobs and lives are so different. And we had quite a few people apply. Almost everyone applied. So we ended up awarding 64 different mini grants. Most of them were 2,000. Some people did not apply for the full amount, but almost all did. So we've been working our way through getting those funds loaded, and we're really excited to hear about the impact. And since I have a few extra minutes to share updates, I pulled out a couple of the ideas of what people are doing with those resource mini grants. So some of the popular grant items were purchasing flash drives or a physical folder to load with the parent mentor flyer and handouts that could be customized for particular groups, such as parents, new teachers, community agencies, new families to the district, new staff. Also popular were copies of books for the parent mentor lending library that they offer books to families in the community, like rights law, things like that. Also popular was looking at handing out copies of children's books for parent mentors to give to targeted families in their districts that would have like their contact information inside of it. So just another way for them to kind of get their name out there and make that initial contact and offer of support. So that was pretty exciting to see. Just a couple more to share. Attending conferences, bringing in professional speakers for families and for staff. And then there were quite a few people that were interested in getting certification in advocacy and special education. So there will be a lot of parent mentors going through that this spring. And then there are a couple people who were looking at translating parent-friendly materials that the parent mentor has made into different languages, mostly Spanish, based on the community of the person that applied for that one. So really cool. They all just got their award letters in the last week or so, and so they'll be working on all spending these funds now, and they will be reporting back to us by the early summer of how that went. Kim is asking if there's a master list of districts in our region who are up for the Indicator 8 survey. I do not know the answer to that question. I'm happy to take that back. That would be a helpful thing to have. I haven't seen it if it exists, but I'm happy to ask. Or if anyone else has that information and wants to jump in, please feel free to do that.
I was getting random emails forwarded by my director, and I just don't want to miss anybody that if I need to, follow up with later to support. So I just kind of have an idea in my head who the districts are in our region. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Yeah, no problem. And then the last thing I wanted to share, and then I'll stop talking, is just a quick update on our family resources webpage that the Office for Exceptional Children is partnering with Early Learning and School Readiness to create a family-friendly webpage. So we're really just getting started with that. We got some great feedback from SAPEC on what would actually be helpful for families. And so we'll be working with our communications in the next few weeks to hopefully get that up and running. And I would love in a future network meeting to get some feedback from you all on how to continue building that out. So thank you. And I'm happy to answer any questions, or feel free to email if you think of something later.
So I'm just watching over the chat to see if any questions come in. Thanks for all the updates, and we're so happy about so many of it just feels like so much is coming together at just one time for families in this space. So we really appreciate you making us aware of everything that's going on and giving us more resources to do our jobs and serve families better. If anyone does have questions that come up for Lindsay throughout the meeting, feel free to throw them in the chat. Make sure that she gets them. And yeah, thanks again, Lindsay. Moving on to our next colleague, I'm wondering, Larissa, do you have any updates from the coalition you'd like to share?
So we are partnering with Handsome Voices of Ohio on February 25th, which is tomorrow, from 7 to 8:30, navigating the educational setting during the COVID-19 pandemic, but specific to students who are deaf and hard of hearing. And we're Tabby Bellhorn is going to be presenting on that. I can stick that flyer in the chat if y'all want and if you're interested. And then let's see. We also, we're currently working, Stephen Gill is coming in, well, you know, online and doing sessions on English language learning. And that session is, and all of these sessions currently are full. We're doing one again the end of February and the first 2 weeks of March. However, we are having him come in again for another session series, I guess, a session series, and watch for that information. It should be coming out in April. So if you're interested in that. We're still doing trainings. We're doing virtual trainings. And if anybody needs any trainings or assistance of any sort, just feel free to reach out to us. Yes, I will do that.
Thank you.
And I think that's it.
Absolutely, and appreciate you taking the time to share with us. And again, feel free to share any links in the chat, and feel free to share any questions for Larissa. We'll make sure that she gets them. And moving on to our next partners, I'm wondering, do we have any updates from O'Callaghan, Jen?
Sure, thanks, Tom. Just a few to share. Just a reminder that we are still continuing our Inspire Ed sessions on Thursdays at 4 o'clock. We do have them scheduled through March, so just continue to check those out. And again, everything that we have shared since September is available on demand, so you can go back and look at those videos easily. One of the projects that the Family Center will be working on is updating our Ohio Parent Guide. This is something that was created 2009, was updated in 2015. It's a resource that helps support families. It was created by families to be able to share that family perspective. And so it's due for an update, not only just with links and contact stuff, but there's just so much more information that we want to make sure we're including. So we are in the process right now of connecting with other family groups across the state to gather some feedback, just so that we can make sure that we are including information that really can support folks right now. We will be changing it to a web-based tool. That way it can be a little more accessible instead of a PDF, and it can also be translated then. So we're kind of excited about being able to roll that out. It's been a great resource to share with families and people supporting families. And so we want to make sure that it's accessible to all families. Couple other highlights just from some of the other centers at O'Callaghan. Our Lifespan Transition Center, through its work with Employment First, is continuing to add to the Journey series. If you haven't had a chance to check that out, these are, again, kind of this video series that helping to support individuals, families, and professionals as they're navigating the process to adulthood. So that is available. Again, it's on the Employment First website, but you can access it through O'Callaghan, and I'll share the links to these resources as soon as I'm done. We are adding to and updating a lot of the modules that are part of our Autism Internet modules. Right now, we've got 3 new ones, modeling, motor differences, and then girls on the spectrum. And they are working on a lot of updates, including modules that are related to autism and early intervention, language and communication, screening across the lifespan, and I think there's a list of 10 that they're working through that they will be updating. So encourage folks to check those out. And then I know that our assistive technology internet modules, or ATIM, is also looking to add some new courses. A recent one is assessment, or I guess AAC assessment for adults with developmental disabilities. So a lot of great stuff coming out of some of our online tools. And then just each of our centers are continuing to add to the collection of resources that are already there. So our Autism Center is adding more to their resource gallery interventions. Lifespan Transition continues to add to their Take 5 video series. And then Ron Rogers in our UDL has been doing 10 minutes with Barb and Ron, kind of these light, fun chats that kind of looks at the different perspectives on UDL, and again, designed for families, educators, professionals. So those are also just some quick things to grab and go. And then I think also just I want to mention that our podcast extraordinaire, Simon, is adding to our Inspiring Change podcast with a new series that is highlighting some of the events and best moments from our OCALICON conference. And the first one that's now available is focused on social justice with the speaker, Charles Barrett, who kind of focuses on some information from his session that he provided, but also goes a little bit further. So I just wanted to kind of let folks know about the podcast and that we continue to add different topics to that series. And then the last thing is just, if you haven't already, save the date, OCALICON Online. We will be hosting it online again. Will be November 17th through 19th. Thanks, Tom. Thanks all.
Awesome, and thanks for sharing. Just feeling very energized by this meeting. A lot of great things happening in the network and around the network. So thanks for sharing, and look for those links in the chat.
Hey, Tom, sorry to interrupt. You mind if I ask a question real quick?
Absolutely.
I was just curious, and I don't know if this is a question for Jen or for OEC, but if there was a timeline on the surrogate parent training video, as some of the SSTs are looking to plan their professional development next year. We were just curious as to what we should look to be putting on our calendar.
So Lindsay, I've got a little information on that, but Lindsay may have more. I know that, just as she mentioned, they're kind of in this review process right now with some of the content our OEC is doing a review right now with stakeholders. And then I think towards the end of the spring, finishing that up. And then I know that they are we're still working on conversations about the platform. So I think those are things that are coming. So don't have a definite timeline, but Lindsay, is there anything that you're aware of from your conversations with the team at OEC?
Not specifically, just that it is a priority, knowing the need that is out there. But we can definitely make sure to share that with this group, because that's important information for you to have as you're planning.
Thank you, guys.
You always a popular topic, the surrogate training, surrogate parent training. So thanks for a good question, and thanks for that info all. Well, if no one else from our partners is here to give announcements, which I don't think I saw in that participant list, then we're actually going to have time for 10 minutes here before we get into kind of our heavy lifting for the day, some of our learning, our reflecting on Joyce's story. Just a reminder, we will be talking about a podcast that was sent out as kind of a pre-learning thing. So if you're running around and getting coffee and didn't have a chance to do that, maybe check in with the podcast, skip around a little bit, make sure you can participate in the conversation. But with that, I'll set a timer and we'll see you in 10 minutes. Thank you. Okie dokie. Hopefully people are making their way back. We have a little space race going on. Love this website when I was a teacher. Still love it now as a person that uses timers. Yes, so we are moving into a little bit of heavier lifting here. We're going to get into a little bit of a learning session around coaching for equity. This has really been the foundation of our professional learning this this school year, I guess I should say, and has been something we've worked hard to kind of build a scope and sequence around. So hopefully you found these to be helpful. And today we're going to kind of really zone in on our realms of concern and our realms of control in these situations. So I hope that everyone had an opportunity to visit the Great Lakes Equity Center website, listen to their podcast from like 2 minutes to 12 or 14 minutes ish in that website. A woman named Joyce really gave a poignant testimony around some of her experiences as a mother of a student with disabilities, and also some of the multiple elements of identity that students and families bring into conversations around these things. Before we start thinking about this in a professional capacity or start debriefing what kind of happened on the school end and family end, which is really easy to do. A lot of us have spent our careers in education and been in situations maybe similar to this or with a similar gravity. It's easy to step directly into our role as educators or coaches or however you see yourself kind of in this space. But before we get started, I'm going to take a minute or two of silence, and I'm not going to ask anyone to share anything, or, you know, this is for you to kind of reflect on the feelings and thoughts that you have around Joyce's story just as an individual, your identity, and how you're kind of dealing with that with your own identity. So I'm going to be quiet here just for a minute, and I'd really appreciate if you could take a second to think about Joyce's story and how it makes you feel. Okie dokie. Well, thank you for indulging in that moment of reflection. And the reason that I did this, or that we started this way, is when we're going to be engaging in professional conversations about things as complex and really delicate as an individual's identity and perception of how their identity is being perceived by other parties and things of that nature. It's really paramount that before we enter into this as professionals, we have some level of thoughtfulness around how this is making us feel as people, so we could build empathy, build connection, kind of really see how we feel in this space before we think about it a little more critically and connect ourselves to this situation. Now that we do know how we feel about the situation and can kind of mull over that a little bit, we can enter into this space with all the tools and skills that we bring as professionals. So that's what we're going to kind of be doing here. We're going to get into small groups just for about 20 minutes, and we're going to go through a protocol for sharing our thoughts around our realm of concern and our realm of influence. And this protocol is completely staged out in a document that you can access on the website. And it looks like Hadley or another partner was able to share it in the chat up there. And so you're going to be in groups of 4 or 5. So hopefully that gives everyone like a minute or 2 per cycle, reflection cycle, to chit chat and share their thoughts, ideas, glean things from other people's thoughts and things. There's going to be one facilitator, and our facilitator today is not going to be so focused on necessarily managing conversation and stuff like that, but we need someone to keep us on track around timing and around following the steps of the protocol. Just make sure that we're having a structured conversation. So there's going to be one facilitator in each group. Follow the protocol, use the notes catcher. We're not necessarily going to be collecting this. This is for you to process your own thoughts around this and your own kind of building a process from, wow, what an intense situation, to what are we actually going to do to coach a school district, or even on the other side, maybe a family that's come to us with this situation. So going from there to there. And as I said, we'll be here for about 20 minutes before I bring it all together. Now, you might be wondering, who's the facilitator in your small group? Well, the first thing I'd like you to do when you get into your small group is determine who is the farthest west in your group. So I know we're spread out across the state today. We're going to be in random groups. So kind of try to figure out who's in the most western part of the state. And that's who's going to keep you on track. Okie dokie. So I'm going to pause just for a second to see if people have questions or thoughts. And if nothing comes up, I'm going to send us into the breakout groups, okay?
Tom, I just have one thing I noticed with the note catcher is that when I downloaded it, I had a difficult time typing into the concentric circles that was on page 2. But if I go up to the top and I do insert text box, then I can put a text box where I want it and type on it there.
Oh, that's great and super helpful. So sorry about that immediately, but great point to point out. You might have to use text boxes when we're talking through the concentric circles, but also feel free to kind of organize your thoughts in the way that flows best for you as well. So with that, I'm going to send us out in these groups. Remember, when we're picking the facilitator, we're thinking about furthest west. I apologize for that. That was not me. It was my cat, Maud. And I'm not trying to blame Maud, but I just wanted to, make clear that I was not trying to catch anyone.
Show your face, Maud.
Yeah, I want to see Maud, because I kind of feel like you're making this up right now. I mean, we literally were having a breakthrough, Tom, and then it was done.
Well, Maud was just
stomping
around on the desk, and
Maud
is cute.
she's very cute. She's,
of course, you would say that, Kim.
She interrupted our
Kim
realm
is
of
the haven
influence,
for all
though.
things kitten.
I do. Hey, I have a cat out here that's a stray that's pregnant. Anybody want a kitten?
That's what I know. You are the haven.
I found it sleeping on my back porch last night.
And then she brought it in the house.
No, I did not. Nope.
And maybe it wants to stay with you.
I would be divorced. I would be divorced if I brought another cat in the house.
Notice her keyword was another. This has happened to her in the past. They keep fighting her.
Yes.
We forgive you, Mom.
I see a question in the chat from Steve. Do I have a cat named Harold? I do not, but it was inspired by Harold and Maude. That movie was a favorite of mine when I had time to watch movies. And so anyways, moving on from cats and film, want to start just to recap just for a little bit. And I checked in on everyone's room at some point, and I feel like everyone was having great conversations. And while this story is challenging as educators to explore, because it's a lot of what we really are working to not see happen in school buildings, or experiences that we're trying to prevent or mitigate with families, it had a lot to dig into. So I heard a lot of different things come up, and that's totally fine. I think there were a lot of things to be concerned about, and there was a lot that could happen that we could have influence over. So I'm wondering if we could have a quick conversation about the concerns. These ones might have been pretty easy. So if you want to share any concerns that came up in the chat, or feel free to open up your mic and let's get some out on the table.
My group talked about the labeling and sort of the predetermination that seemed to be happening with that. So that was one of the areas that we talked about. We also talked about her son's unhappiness and the impact that can have on his future education moving forward, and him as a person. So those were a couple that surfaced in our group.
Definitely, thanks for sharing.
In our group, we were pretty concerned about the reaction of the teachers and the roles that they played, even those that were not directly in contact with that student, but kind of like, you know, the rumors, like the teacher heard and emailed right away that first week back, and like, I've heard you guys have really struggled, or conversations that happened in the teacher's lounge. So that was a big area of concern for us.
If I could add to that, one thing that really bothered me was the divide in regard to perceptions between behavior, or the perspective of the mother and her son's behavior versus the teachers and the students' behavior, right? From the mother's perspective, the things that he was doing were culturally appropriate. They were an extension of what was happening in activities offered through the school, and the teachers saw it as disruptive. And we talked about that in the beginning. Then we sort of ended the conversation that, you know, over the course of time, that sort of implicit bias that just keeps building and building and building, and it just I think snowballs, right? The teachers are more irritated, and then they pick on the kid. I mean, quite literally, right? And then he gets agitated, and then his behavior escalates, and I think it just keeps cycling, or keeps growing. And I guess, you know, maybe if from the beginning, if they had a conversation and understanding of that behavior and what that is and what that means, I think maybe they could have avoided a lot of negative situations.
We talked about that too, Steve, in room 2, that the lack of effective communication, especially listening and empathy, seemed to be missing.
You know, we brought that up in our team as well. I felt like something that was kind of really bothered me is the fact that she went to that school as a child, and she had children previous, and this was her baby. And yet, was there a relationship with the school and the family where they could have these conversations? And it took the 3rd grade teacher to say, how can we support this situation, all the way up to 3rd grade? And I thought that was, it bothered me, because we talk about having relationships with our families, and I don't think they had a relationship as a community.
I was thinking with respect to what Steve and Susan were saying, also the fact that there has been a history of this. So think about the trauma that has been affected. This is now 3rd grade that they're having this conversation. So all those years before that, what has been said in. And then in addition to that, another word that came to mind was cultural humility. and that there seemed to be an empathy deficit to really overcome that and to walk that path out with the family. And that's huge, and that's sometimes overlooked. And sometimes I think there might be folks who believe, well, I didn't go into education for this, but this is part of the calling.
Krista, I'm not familiar with that term, cultural humility.
Cultural humility. And basically, it's really about understanding other cultures and being able to walk alongside them. Our Mental Health Recovery Services Board does training with respect to cultural humility and really having people understand what this means to engage with other cultures. It also pairs with implicit bias because you understand what your biases are so that you can be humble and have that humility as you're working and talking with other cultures and not making assumptions and being aware of that, of your blind spots. Thanks. Hadley put some other information as well in the chat. Thanks, Hadley.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for sharing and thanks for that explanation, Krista. Good question. Not that I want to push the conversation too fast. I think we could have probably done 4 hours of this meeting just on the realm of concern about this situation. I think there's like multiple layers, multiple levels to what's going on here. But I think, you know, was productive once we get those concerns out in the open is kind of identifying where we do have some influence and could maybe affect practice. So I'm wondering again, so were there areas of concern that you identified and then were able to narrow in on, okay, well, I can influence these things that can maybe mitigate those concerns?
One of the things we talked about in room 2 was we could create supports for teachers who think that they can't teach a particular child so that they have some feeling of efficacy as they're working with something that's new to them, if that was the situation.
So we could influence the capacity of like teachers that this student and other students are in touch with to be working with diverse perspectives or diverse behaviors, things of that nature. We could build that capacity. That's a good one. Other things we can influence.
Two of the things we talked about in addition to helping training with staff on internal bias and maybe reading a book, doing a book study like White Fragility or something else to help us all learn those internal biases that we have, they're just embedded in us, and be aware of those so that we don't act on them. Asking those hard questions at the district level, and what are we doing systemically to help combat internal bias, and start those conversations. And then Steve really brought up a good point about what are these kids, what is this child's, what are his strengths, like how does he learn best, and then how can we use that to help build a positive relationship with him and help him not to be the target of being in trouble all of the time, but see some of the things that he says does, the skills that he has as positive things, not things to get in trouble for.
Absolutely. Oh, don't be shy. I heard a lot of good ideas.
One thing we talked about in our group a little bit to connect with what Tammy just said, we talked about how in the building level, a lot of decisions are being made around least restrictive environment for students. When teachers have the good intentions of wanting to kind of caretake for a student or sort of coddle them along, but it's not their least restrictive environment to be taken into a resource room or taken out of the general education environment. I think one of the things we can do as coaches is open up that conversation about why allowing students to be in their least restrictive environment is actually best practice for them, and that lowering expectations because of our implicit biases, really causes harm to students over time, and that happens disproportionately to Black students and Black male students. And I think we need to name that with educators, particularly if when we're working with schools where many of the staff members are white, particularly staff members who are making decisions about what environment a student should be educated in.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, I know that there's a lot more out there, and I hope that you kind of followed the line of what we're doing here in terms of identifying the concerns, not really identifying the concerns, and then moving into how you can influence them through strategies. A couple of things I heard come up is that there's definitely like not a multi-tiered system of supports in place, like obviously, or not obviously, but seemingly a lot of this could have been mitigated if there were like supports in place at maybe the intermediate tier. Even could have mitigated a lot of this. And another thing that I really wanted to point out, and I love where everyone's headspace is on this, is when we're working at the state and regional level, or we're coaching, or we're helping people, even with things like accountability, it's really easy to look at stories like this and say, oh, well, that's illegal. They just can't do that. Well, the fact of the matter is we have 12 minutes of a parent's experience that whether it's illegal or not, it did happen, and it is happening to this parent. And not to say that we shouldn't be keeping a close eye and encouraging schools and districts to meet their responsibilities and to provide these services that they are required to by law. But I don't think noting that anything is illegal and shouldn't be happening has ever changed practice. I think the ideas that you've talked about from your actual realm of influence is what could move districts in a positive direction and reduce kind of this complete separation and complete, distance between perceptions of the two groups closer together. So I'm really pleased that this came up. Also, there's been some great chats coming in here. So make sure to scroll through the chats and look at some of that. And then the last thing I'll just kind of say about this is that, part of being an educator, I think, is really kind of about engaging in like what is just and right for children. So really centering ourselves in situations like this, not only around empathy, but kind of a social justice mindset, and making sure that not only are students getting what they're entitled to, but they're getting set up to really be able to be themselves and be as successful and happy as they can be in their lives. So appreciate you digging into this, but as came up multiple times in this conversation, the perceptions of both parties here are far apart. The perceptions of how the other side is perceiving them, the perception of what's going on the other side, they're very far apart, and it's hard to build any type of relationship if you're not even kind of in the same realm of reality. So today we have invited our friends from O'Callaghan to kind of give some points on how to build or strategies for communicating in situations or building communication when there might seem to be kind of gaps in that space, and how to do that proactively. So I'm actually going to turn it over to our colleague Jen now to talk a little bit about that and wrap up this learning opportunity for us.
All right, thanks, Tom. So I really, so I had a chance to kind of listen in on this podcast as I was thinking of an activity or a strategy to help support conversation. And I really appreciated hearing all of the things that we've discussed today, because it just kind of reinforces some of the same things I was hearing and different things that I know that we're missing in all of this. And I actually had a chance to talk with a couple of my colleagues as I was trying to figure out what would be a good a good strategy to add on to this. And well, I need to share my slides. Hold on a second here. I'm talking and I'm not even have these up. So here we go. All right. So hopefully you are seeing my lovely little slides here. So as I was trying to narrow this down and just having these few minutes to talk with you, as I mentioned, I was talking with some of my colleagues about some of the supports or coaching things that they've done to help support conversations that are sensitive, conversations that that they're having in schools, to just kind of support the similar situation that we just heard from Joyce. And so kind of focusing on two areas here, like how can we help support with just the reflection? I think I've heard that a lot here today, is just taking time for our teachers and staff members to just reflect on what is really going on. What are they observing? What is happening? And taking some time to just do that step. But also in creating what could be another tool to help kind of create this model for practicing on having conversations. I think we've all heard this too, that those conversations can be very sensitive, or sometimes it's just like, do we need to even have the conversation? But being able to have opportunities to practice on, building your confidence, building comfort level, and, addressing some of those situations. So the strategy, and this kind of goes, I think, really well with some of the things we just did, is called, oops, let me turn my, the Fishbowl Discussion. I don't know if people have heard of this one before, but I thought this was kind of a great way of being able to look at things through a different lens. And so the Fishbowl Discussion, I'm trying to maneuver my community. How many of you are familiar with this tool? I know it's used in classrooms with students. I see a thumbs up there, a couple. Okay, good. So it won't be too new to folks. But so the Fishbowl Discussion is exactly what this is. You have an inner circle, folks that are actively participating, asking questions and sharing information with each other. And then you have this outer circle who's looking in at the fishbowl and kind of observing the conversation that's happening, listening carefully as ideas are being presented and taking notes. And again, this just allows an opportunity for a conversation to happen around a specific goal with active, maybe people who are really impacted by it, but then you have the opportunity to have others observe what's going on and be able to provide feedback about that interaction and the contributions to the conversation. And we actually did this recently at one of our staff meetings. And so it was one where we just had two staff members who were kind of discussing a resource that they were rolling out. And then the rest of us had the opportunity to kind of observe that conversation and offer feedback based on different perspectives. Okay. So the benefits of the Fishbowl Discussion, for those of you who maybe are not familiar with it, or maybe if anyone has any additional thoughts that they, from their experiences with using this strategy, is that it does help to develop kind of a criteria or a measurement that you can use for building effective collaboration and communication, whether that's internal with your staff or being able to add on to those skills as you're having conversations with family members. And it allows, again, that evaluation of that discussion. And so, again, you have that outer circle of folks who are observing the interaction, and it allows for this reflection and feedback through those observation and interactions. And the other thing too is you're doing this activity and you're kind of maybe narrowing down to a root cause about something, or just diving a little bit deeper into a specific goal and maybe how you might be able to change something in a certain setting. It's also kind of naturally building in these opportunities to have thoughtful conversations. How do you ask open-ended questions? How do you appreciate the ideas that are being shared by others? And then how do you get more comfortable with putting your own ideas on the table? And again, through this activity, you have this opportunity to, have conversations, closely assess those discussions, and really be able to build more productive and engaging conversations as you're going forward. And so this is one that, you could start as you are coaching, educators or your districts. You could start there and helping them kind of develop the skills behind this type of strategy. And then from that, then begin to maybe carry those things over into conversations that they're having with families and parents. Any questions so far? All right. So the roles and the process involved with this fishbowl discussion. So basically you've got 3 roles and there's 4 steps in the process. Well, there's a final step with the group coming together, but it starts off with a facilitator. The facilitator is one who kind of helps review what the discussion goal is going to be. And you kind of want to narrow that down to a very focused area. And so you can have multiple conversations, but you really want to make sure that you are going to be able to dive into a conversation and get to the root cause of that. So the facilitator would be presenting questions and different viewpoints. We kind of talked about different identities and different perspectives. And they would be presenting those questions to inner circle participants who are the ones that are entering into that fishbowl to discuss the situation and kind of go a little bit further into the goal. And then you do have your outer circle folks, your observers who are listening to the conversation that's taking place in that fishbowl and taking notes. Again, you're looking at it from different lenses, different viewpoints. Everyone's kind of looking into that fishbowl differently. And so it kind of allows a little bit more feedback from different people wearing different hats. And then after you have the conversation with the inner circle and the observers, then the group comes together to kind of have an open conversation after to discuss, what did you observe and what were those interactions? And one thing to note, as the coach, as you're going in, and if you wanted to try this strategy with your folks that you're supporting, you could start out as the facilitator. And then as the team is getting more familiar with this process, you'd want to encourage one of their staff members to then become the facilitator. But it's always really important to have that role identified because it does help with keeping the questions on track and that, you can dive a little bit deeper into the discussion. All right. Okay. So I was thinking that it would be good to see how we can apply this approach to what we just heard in Joyce's story. And there were a couple things that there's so many things you could do there. I think just from our conversation before, we all came up with so many different concerns and different areas that we might be able to influence. But I thought I'd focus on one just to kind of show this as an example on how this particular strategy or approach could be used. So kind of thinking back to, I know a lot of us mentioned this along the way, just being prepared to be at school. We heard comments about not being excited about school or, wanting him to sit calmly at school and making requests that he wasn't comfortable with. And of course, we've heard that, disruptive and violent behavior comments. So maybe a starting point here, our goal is to reevaluate or to look at and reflect with the teachers on, what are the requirements of the day? I mean, if you look at the school day, I know that there's certain things that need to be addressed. There's certain content that needs to be covered. So what are those requirements during the day? And then where might there be opportunities for flexibility? So it's kind of looking at how can you bring that student into the picture? How are you actually, instead of just dismissing them that they can't, meet the requirements or they can't meet the core, how can you look at what your day is involved and how can you then bring that student into that? So in using this approach, where you could start with your goal is, the goal could be evaluating the requirements of the day. What are those opportunities to have flexibility during the school day? And so coming together to have this fishbowl conversation or this fishbowl discussion, you would have, the coach or the facilitator that would present questions around this goal of, just diving a little bit deeper into this one area. And then your inner circle would be those immediate team members, like the teacher, the folks that are really involved in the student's day. That's who you would be asking the questions to and having to dive a little bit deeper into understanding, what are their expectations? What are their assumptions? What are the things that they're thinking have to happen? And hopefully leading to more of a conversation and discussion about those opportunities to add some things into the student's day or opportunities to support the student. And then the outer circle would be colleagues or other staff members, or they could even be part of that immediate team that's also kind of observing maybe more of a one-on-one conversation happening within that fishbowl. So again, the outer circle, as you're setting this up, if you do want to try this activity with the district that you're supporting, as you're setting it up, it's really important to make sure everyone understands their role in this process too. So the outer circle folks, again, as I mentioned, they're the ones that are going to observe, and they're the ones that be taking notes. And what you really want to make sure that they're focusing on, it's not looking at, oh, this person's doing something wrong, or this person, I wouldn't do it this way. It's more about trying to come up with, what are some of those things you agree with? What are some of those interesting and insightful points that are happening in this inner circle conversation that, you know, you're really taking note of? What are some questions that you might have? You know, what needs clarification on what you're hearing in this conversation? And, you know, what are things that you kind of use the word challenge, but what are the things that maybe you would approach differently, or something that you might say, maybe why don't we try, you know, something along this lines, or this is an alternative option. And then I guess the other piece too is it's what are the roles of the people that are observing? So what are the different perspectives that are being offered? And this could be a situation where you have, you know, it's the role of, maybe it's a building administrator or a principal, or it's an OT, or, you know, they each serve a different role. But you could also look at, you know, do any of these professionals, are they also parents? You know, would it be beneficial to have them wear that parent hat while they're observing this conversation, just to be able to offer that different perspective through that different lens? And so again, there's some things that you want to kind of set like the ground rules for the outer circle, and that these are things that they're going to focus on as they're taking notes and observing the conversation. And then the inner circle, again, this is the coach or facilitator who's kind of leading the process and presenting questions and multiple viewpoints for discussion of this inner circle team of whoever you've, you know, decided. And again, if with this particular situation, it would be the teacher and those immediate team members involved with that student. You want to make sure that the questions are open-ended, that, you know, they're allowing for more than one possible answer, instead of just focusing on, you know, yes, no questions, because you really want to make sure you can dive as deep as possible into this conversation and kind of get to that root cause. And, you know, other strategies that could help support this are something like the 5 whys. I'm sure folks have heard of that strategy, where you just dive a little bit deeper into your questions by adding a question onto that, just to be able to continue to learn more and really help folks think about the situation by having these reflective questions and listening and adding on to what they're already saying. And I was just thinking for this particular, I just threw up a couple of questions here that maybe could be considered a good place to start as you're looking at some of those quotes that I added in the beginning, you know, not enjoying school, and, you know, with things that are not comfortable doing, or sitting calmly. So some of the questions where you could start, you know, is, you know, what are you actually observing in the classroom? You know, really dive deep into what are they noticing? What is some of the data maybe you've collected? What are some of the things that, you know, have happened during the day? And what are you actually noticing with this child before, during, after these moments where you're saying, you know, he just doesn't want to be there, he's disruptive or disrespectful? What are you actually seeing in those moments? And taking that conversation down that path. Kind of coming back to the idea of looking at your required activities. What's that core that you have to teach to? What is it that has to happen during that classroom day? How can you bring that student into that, you know, and really help the teachers reflect on, okay, where could I, you know, what are some things I could to do to help support him, to bring him into those required activities? And then again, looking at opportunities to be flexible. So during those flexible times, or maybe you do have a little bit of breathing room where you could introduce a strategy, or you could kind of explore different things that might help support the student, such as visuals, or is there some sensory things, and using that time to really help the student be able to be engaged in those opportunities where there's some flexibility that then can be carried over to those required activities throughout the day. And again, as I mentioned here, kind of what are some supports, you know, kind of going back to the basics of, you know, what are things that maybe weren't done in the beginning? You know, is there things that we could do to help prime the student? Are there, you know, when he comes into the classroom, are there options to be able to have some more sensory feedback? You know, can he walk around? Can he sit in more of a chair with a little bit of a cushion on it? Would that help? So just being able to look at some of those other supports that might be able to be there in place to help prepare the student for the day. And then after completing kind of that inner circle questions, and again, these questions, honestly, I think you could probably build a lot of the questions from just the activity we did before this to kind of help you with diving a little bit deeper into those situations, is that you would bring the whole group back together then. And this would be an opportunity for the inner circle to continue that conversation and hear from the outer circle and the different lenses and the different perspectives of what they observed from that inner conversation. Again, starting with the positive, when you're going through and looking at the discussion, interactions, and contributions, what were some of those things you agreed with? What were some of those things that were very, interesting, or points that you want to make sure that, you stress how great, these are things that we definitely need to make sure we continue doing. And then move into the clarifying questions. What are things that you need to know more about? And then, of course, then going into things that maybe you would like to challenge, or you would like to say, hey, well, what about trying this approach, or being able to offer different strategies to help support that student. And again, having this whole process and going through all of this really helps to, as I said, it kind of creates that model to support having conversations and assessing conversations and getting feedback from the folks that you work with. It also helps you look at kind of appreciating others' ideas, because again, you're getting different perspectives here. And then also, being able to put your own ideas on the table. So just a strategy to consider that maybe might help support conversations as you're looking at working with your school teams. This is just one that I think it could be a simple one to try, it could be, being in the fishbowl might be a little uncomfortable for some folks, but it does just allow this opportunity for a conversation to happen. Again, a very focused conversation to happen, whatever the goal might be, and then being able to offer some feedback and being able to look at the situation through a different lens can really help, I think, just build the capacity of our school teams and how they connect with their students, how they connect with each other, and then how they are connecting with families. So yeah, any questions?
Jen, I put a question in chat. I'm wondering if this is something that you envision a school being able to do to role play for meetings with parents, kind of to check biases, or if you would advise that gets too potentially sticky with predetermination.
I think it could definitely be something, again, it's a model. So you could use it as a way to just help support, maybe just you're offering feedback on how they're communicating. Are they asking these open-ended questions? Are they diving a little bit deeper into learning about the different perspectives from the family's point of view, the different visions and concerns? So I think you could definitely use it as a way of preparing for conversations, if that's kind of what you're thinking. Yeah, I think it's just a good way to offer feedback that maybe others aren't seeing when they're kind of in conversations. I see Krista mentioned using this before. Good. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I know that. Yeah, it's just one that it's an interesting approach to it. If you're thinking about it, again, you can use it as, especially since you're using it as a way to also not only get to a concern or get down to something or trying to change the way things are happening, but it's also giving you this opportunity to build on your communication skills and to build on how you are interpreting things and build on how others are looking at it too. So I think it helps, again, just having those conversations and that assessment.
Well, thanks for sharing, Jen. And I feel free to keep dropping questions in the chat. And also Meredith kind of, I think, put out like a broad question to you all in the audience that if you guys see opportunities to use this in your work with your colleagues or with districts, so feel free to respond to that. I also just couldn't second kind of what Jen left us with enough, that things like role playing or going through discussion protocols is uncomfortable, and it is a little goofy at first, and it can be kind of you know, a little bit of a challenge to get into a headspace to really put yourself in there and participate in it fully. But I would also kind of say that when you all were becoming educators, I'm sure college was a little uncomfortable and challenging at points. I'm sure professional development sessions have been. I'm sure if you've ever taken a break from exercising, it's kind of hard to get back on the horse, a little uncomfortable. Sometimes getting better and growing those skills, we have to kind of push through a little awkwardness and uncomfortability to get there. And I just know that I don't even think I was that good of a teacher, but I wouldn't even have been an average teacher if it wasn't for things like role playing and really breaking down what you're going to do in front of a group of people. So it does feel a little more natural when you get there. So I really appreciate you sharing that protocol. That puts kind of a bow on our conversation, and hopefully it's a tool people can take away. So thanks again, Jen, and feel free to thank Jen and all of our presenters in the chat. But I don't want to separate people from lunch. It's 12:30. There's already been some snacking conversation going in the Ohio Statewide Family Engagement Center group chat. So what we're going to do here, because we're kind of in our homes and offices, I'm going to put up a timer for about 30 minutes. I hope that's enough time for everyone. And then also feel free to bring your snacks back if you're in a rush or anything. And in the afternoon, we're going to do some updates from the center, some updates from our work groups, and hopefully keep having a great meeting. So I'll put up that timer now, and we'll be around if you have any questions or anything. So thank me. Get all situated. Oh, no, not my notes. So hopefully we're able to get rejuvenated by lunchtime and get some stuff in there. Maybe a little coffee, a little water, hopefully a little snack, something to keep us going on our journey. I'm not Dr. Boone, but I will be doing some center updates today along with Meredith. And so I'm gonna just get this show on the road so we can save as much time for our work group updates. One thing we wanted to share with you is that we've revamped our guide to choosing a school in Ohio. This project has been going on for about a year, maybe even a little longer. And we're now in the second version of the tool. It's obviously a really important time for families as they think about what type of school setting is best for them, their family and children. This time of year is kind of when that stuff's going on. And I think that this might also be a little, maybe not like more important, but maybe with everything going on with public health and stuff, that people might be trying to see if there's different types of school settings that might work for their children and things. So I just wanted to show you this really quickly here. So if you travel to ohiofamiliesengaged.osu.edu, under the 4 families here, there is a drop down for our guide to choosing a school tool. And we're where this graphic is, we should have a video in the next couple of weeks that's kind of like a demo for families or users of this when they choose to use it. This is just kind of a starting point for families that are not sure about what different types of options or schools exist in Ohio. So the best place to start if you're at square one or you have people calling about with questions, that is we have the whole tool here. And it's basically just a combination of questions that kind of guide people, engage their interests in different types of settings. So we start kind of from the traditional neighborhood school and move outward in terms of options for families. And it's all kind of set up about the same. It asks you kind of about the school, and you can either click this say yes or no, and which will take you to the next option. And this not sure button gives you a little bit more information about that specific school setting. So it might, your neighborhood school is your school of assignment type deal. And then when we go into each kind of option, it gives you basics about things like enrollment or transportation or what type of prerequisites might be required for a family to take on as they think about that school setting. So we've worked pretty hard and checked and triple and double checked this. And a lot of the information is just directly from the Ohio Department of Education and kind of repackaged in a more kind of just easier to navigate format. Also, if you do see stuff in there that you're like, I've been working with schools like this for a long time, that sounds kind of weird how it's worded, feel free to reach out. Basically, we're trying to just reduce the amount of confusion for families around what school options are out there. There's also some information about the Peterson Scholarship and Ed Choice Scholarship for families that might be looking for alternative options outside of their kind of normal, traditional district of responsibility situation. I don't know how in touch you all are with this, but the Ed Choice program did have some updates to it this year. So there might be some new things to consider around that for families and things of that nature. One or two other things that I want to just kind of point out is if a family kind of has a question about just like a specific school option, we have this page here that kind of has everything laid out at one time, so people could just kind of click around without having to go through the whole tool. So that type of stuff. And then the other thing, which was kind of like the third step of the process, or kind of like closer to the actual choosing a school part, is we have some resources here for families when they find out that there might be multiple school settings that they're interested in. What are some ways of asking questions, or what types of questions you ask if you go on a school visit, or how do I know if this school is like kind of meeting the mark in terms of achievement and outcomes and stuff. We have some stuff there, resources for families, and so that's the tool. I'd love for people to click around in there, give some feedback, share it if it's appropriate, but really wanted you all to know that that resource exists. So yeah, if there's any big time, if there's any questions about it, feel free to throw them in the chat or reach out right now. Okie dokie.
Tom,
So,
this is Kim. Sorry. Two of the districts that I'm working with are actually online community schools that are dropout recovery schools. And I'm finding they're both really struggling with attendance. And one of the questions that I've been asking them is, like, how are you setting your students and the families up for success in an online curriculum? So I didn't know if you had something like that within the tool, like things to consider. Like, there's quite a few of us who got thrown into online school and we didn't have the skill set. We didn't have the executive skills in place to be able to be successful. So I was just wondering if there is somewhere in there, if that could be added, or if you already had something that was like that are like tips for success in an e-school or an online school, because it's different. Like, you need to plan, you need to schedule, you need to organize.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. And I'm kind of fumbling around looking for a pen right now. I think that's something that we could definitely add as kind of this, especially in that resource section that I was just showing, that, like you said, moving to an online school might mean a completely kind of different way of planning for your educational experience. So I would also note to you that if you have any resources that you've vetted or put together from that experience, pass them along and we'll see if it kind of fits into our thing. But I think that's a great point. Thank you for that feedback.
You're welcome. I don't know where it was. Maybe it was in another webinar, but it was really interesting. They had the parent and the child sit down and draw what remote school would look like. So you didn't have to use words. You could just draw it and kind of sketched out. And then you shared your drawings and you realized like, whoa, both of you are sitting in bed in your pajamas and both of you have the dog, like if there's 2 kids in the house. So the kids definitely had a very, a bowl of popcorns in bed with them, and the dogs, they're fighting over who's going to hang out with the dog. And the parents are like, whoa, this is not even what I imagined this to look like. But it was a really eye-opening activity for this group when they actually gave them a chance to sit down and talk about what does it look like from a parent perspective and a child perspective. It was pretty cool.
Thank you. And also from my time at ODE, I do know that some of those programs go have better onboarding processes than others about trying to help people be successful. I would also point out, if you're working with schools to that end, in terms of how to support students learning online, and this kind of goes beyond online learning, at least right now, there's still some people doing blended learning and things like that. There is a video from the summit from the principal, 2 administrators at the Metro School right across the street from us in Columbus, where they break down their process for onboarding parents with the technology students are going to use so that they also feel successful and prepared to help their students. So we'll keep looking into that. And I, again, appreciate that.
It's a great idea.
Important point. Cool. Well, like I said, feel free to check that stuff out. Another quick update, and this doesn't really require action immediately, but just something to put on your radar and keep a lookout for. It is Voices from the Field time, and it's actually, for this school year, 2020-2021. We will be putting together, of course, a type of either email or communication that kind of lays out the direction we're headed with this, as well as a submission form or submission process and things. But we did want to just put this in on the roadmap of where we're headed in the next couple of weeks. And this year, to kind of try to keep things is streamlined as possible and make sure that we're not really generating any type of super extra work or anything. We want to focus again in on your regional plans for engaging families. So the type of stories that we will kind of be looking for this time will be kind of just anything from your region's plan around family engagement and kind of the outcomes and successes related to that, as well as your process. We have all of them, or we have a bunch of them up on the website. If you need to look around, see what you wrote last year and stuff like that. If your regional plan is either still in like kind of an implementation phase, or you might not exactly have outcomes that you're ready to share yet, we're really going to be happy and looking for any type of success around engaging families of students with disabilities. That was kind of our recentering this year. We've been working so hard and expanding our efforts in expertise in family engagement, but we really did want to remember that this group and the state support teams broadly support the work families and students with disabilities. So if that is a tie-in that you have, that's great too. So just wanted to throw that out there and keep your brains or get your brains kickstarted towards that direction about what story you might like to share. And remember that this is it might not be something we've talked about in this group. I know that your regions are doing great family engagement work across all of your programming and all of your supports. So if there's something just from any part of that kind of regional family engagement plan that pops up, that could be cool. So yeah. Any big questions about voices from the field, or did anyone have like any type of like big time feedback from last time or things to pay attention to you'd like for us to be aware of as we get towards the planning more of this? Okie dokie. Well, feel free to reach out anytime. You can email me directly or anything too, as we'll be getting this up and going in the next couple weeks here. But with that, I'm going to throw it over to Meredith really quick because she's put together something great for our Indicator 8 family survey.
Yeah, Tom, if I could just jump in. I got, I have been in communication with the OSU team that is sending out emails and alerts about the Indicator 8 survey. And so all of your SSTs should have received an email probably yesterday, indicating the districts in your region. So so maybe just look for that. And then, yeah, Meredith is going to pull up some tools that team created in order to really boost participation. One of them is of a cultural broker for Black families and some other translations. So Meredith is going to show you that.
All right. Hi, everyone. Just a quick note about the voices from the field stuff. We're going to send out more guidance, a template you can use soon, and it'll really be focused on what your region is doing. So, you know, sometimes you guys want to share about what schools are doing, but this voices report really, just as a reminder, focuses on like how your regional teams are really building capacity. So switching gears now, I know we've talked a little bit about the special education family survey that addresses Indicator 8, but since our team has been working on making that survey online, first of all, and then accessible to more families instead of just the schools having sort of this requirement like get at least 2 or you know, like a very small requirement each year of families. It's really, we're trying to open it up and get families more access to have their voices heard. So we put together a web page on our website, and I'm going to throw, if someone hasn't already, I'm going to throw the URL in the chat. So this is going to be sent to district leaders, and it's password protected. But I want you guys to see how we're making this survey more accessible. So there's a brief welcome notice for district leaders. There is a video of Dr. Kenyana Walker talking about why this survey is important for families to take. And that's really because we want to make sure that we're getting an understanding of the unique experiences of Black parents in Ohio who have a child in the special education system. So district leaders can send this video out with the invitation to families and in a targeted way if they like. And then we have the invitations translated into 6 different languages, so district leaders can download the invitation in the languages they need and send it to families in whatever normal communications pathway they would use to reach out to families. Obviously, there's a big QR code. There's also other ways to access the survey. And as you can see, we're trying to model the use of the opportunity for all, which we know is really important for framing family engagement. So this is just another example of how we're reframing family engagement to prioritize opportunity for all and launching student success. So if you're looking for some more ideas for how to address equity and use the reframing language, we try and weave it into communications like this. Barb, was there anything else you wanted me to mention about this page?
No, I accept that as you are coaching districts who are inviting families to complete the survey this year, since it is open to all, they're not selecting a few, that basically the selection, the way that it's rolled out is not as random as it was before. It's a certain set of districts every 6 years, and it's all the families we can get from that district to respond. So that's a real shift from some districts who were just recruiting a few folks because they were just trying to meet a threshold of a certain number of districts or responses. So that's different. But also in particular, we do not have good representation of the perspectives of Black families. And so that is like explicitly, we are really trying to seek out and have responses from Black families. So that's hence the effort there with that video, hoping that Kenyana as a parent and as a school psychologist is able to sort of appeal to folks in that way. But I think would be a great thing to strategize around too. What are the other ways that the school district can really, who are the sort of local families who could reach out to other families so that all families have that opportunity if they want to participate to jump in and take that survey and share their responses and letting them know that they'll be heard. So,
Barb, are you aware of the process? If a school district has enough responses, will they get a local report of their results? Or is that something that may be possible in the future that we've thought about?
I can't speak definitively to it, but I think that is the direction that we are heading with that. And also from this data set, just as a state level for all of you, that there'll be longitudinal data from this. So I think there were between 6,000 and 7,000 families that completed it last time. So we'll be able to sort of see things move, and it will be a great data to help guide all of us and our partners in this. I don't know, Lindsay, if you want to add to that at all.
No, I definitely think we would like to have the ability for districts to see their individual results. So like you said, Barbara, that's exactly where I think this is heading. And I personally am very excited about individual districts actually being able to access and see their own data and hopefully be able to use that as a data point to do some of their planning.
And then the question about was that particular website shared with SSTs? I believe it was shared with the district point of contact. We can kind of head back and see if the Office for Exceptional Children and the team that's working on this all think it. I can't speak. You know me.
That's okay.
I share everything with everybody, but
that's okay. That's the reason why I was asking. We had a staff meeting yesterday, and it came up as a part of this, and I was like, "Is this the same survey?" But it came up regarding a survey invitation for special education, and it had the QR code. And so the question was, Krista, did you know about that? And I was like, oh, well, I'll research it. So I'm thinking that this is already out because one of our consultants who works with special education, she was knowledgeable. Well, she did some research and found out about it. So I think it's gone out, but we did talk about it in our SST9 meeting yesterday. And I think in this survey, it gives parents, if they complete it, they will be entered in for a drawing for $50. Okay. So that's why, I think that's why I got the question. And I was like, oh, okay. So just FYI, I think it is out. We talked about it as a team. But the other piece here that I think also went out, it was just the invitation. I don't know if it linked. I don't know if what I had was just the invitation. I didn't know that there was an actual video until today. That's explaining why the survey should be completed. So I'm not sure if those things are connected or if districts only saw the invitation.
So districts got an email, and it probably was yesterday because I was talking to Beth who sends those out, and I think she said I have 154 emails to send today. Like she was working on all of those. I think it was yesterday or maybe the day before. All the days run together. But they so I think in the district letter they got the link to that page so that they could see those tools that are available for them there in that page. So they got all of that.
Thank you. This is
So
Our SSTs should know which districts got the invitations by what they received then?
Yes, during our morning meeting, when someone had that question, I went and did some other messaging and found out that yes, those emails went to your state support teams. Yes.
Barbara, this is Betsy. We got them. I just sent them to my team earlier this
There
morning.
you go. All right, there you go.
The directors received them. Thank you.
Thanks, Betsy.
And the reason we're doing this survey twice this year is because the fall missed. They should have been in the spring, right? So I wasn't
Yes.
thinking that we're going to be doing it again this spring, and all of a sudden it popped up, and you're like, oh yeah, we are supposed to be doing it to catch up. So
yeah, it is a catch up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
okay.
or it's not a catch. Like I guess actually this is the normal time, right?
Right.
And
right.
the one in the fall was the catch up time.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Okay.
Sort of. Yeah. Yeah. You're right. We're trying to get a lot done in this year.
Yeah, and one last or one other question came in about the website is not where the data will actually be. That's correct, team? Yeah.
So, right. I think the idea is, and that it could be a landing site that would have all sorts of things related to that survey. Could have a past year's report, could have other things, but I think that's all being sort of figured out of how to make that accessible and in the best way. ODE certainly directing that and just trying to be responsive and make things available to folks. So, yeah.
Thank you. So big things happening. Appreciate all the questions, and I'm really looking forward to this. I think maybe when we kick off the next FCE network year, we might have some really cool stuff to be digging into. So that's exciting. Now, with that, the rest of the time is reserved for our work group updates. I reached out to kind of people in all our work groups and asked if they might be able to prepare like a 10 to 15-minute update. So we have 3 work groups left after our great touch base with the early literacy group this morning. And I also just want to remind you again that we created that Google Doc that's up on the website to keep any type of notes. You can tell people great job, and that's what I'm going to do right now is tell everyone great job. I've been working in and out of these work groups for the last couple years, supporting them the best I can, and I just have to say, like, this is not about other years being like worse, but we're on a different level in terms of creating resources and getting things out to the field. And so I just can't thank you all enough for your commitment to a volunteer work group to create these resources that can be used by the field. Beautiful so far, but I am potentially maybe the only one that's gotten to see what every work group is working on. So I'd love if you guys could step up to the mic and let us know what's going on, and feel free to engage in the chat or on that document. I chose straws, and the Great Meetings work group, you're the shortest straw, so you're gonna have to go first here.
Sounds good. Can you allow me to share my screen, please? One second. Sorry. Maybe, there we go. Everybody see that good?
Thanks.
And I apologize for my dog. It's like the first time people have been outside walking in forever, and he's really enjoying the day. So, so we are the Great Meetings Work Group. We were charged with putting together, I guess it's been almost a year and a half now, maybe even closer to 2 years, where we started talking about how districts need to look at it would be helpful for districts to look at their procedures and policies about welcoming families into the building. So when they come for an IEP meeting, or they come for just a discussion about their student, even conferences, is the front office staff welcoming? Do they know where to go? Are they comfortable entering the building? Is the meeting comfortable, or do they have this idea that they've had this pre-meeting and the school's already against them? So really, like, just being intentional about the planning process and the information that you give to parents ahead of time. So we decided to create a small professional development. So this is just an overview of what it is. I'll show you some screenshots of what the actual program would look like, but here's just kind of the nuts and bolts of the professional development that we designed. So an overview is to help schools improve their welcoming environment, that's spelled wrong, when holding special ed meetings. So the agenda, or the big topics that we want to cover during this professional development, is to help schools review, revise, and create a systematic way to ensure that your meetings are aligned with evidence-based practices, to ensure that practices are free of any possible barriers for participants, to identify and strengthen strengths and weaknesses of your current practices, and then to identify the next steps of how you can make your building meeting processes to look, how your building processes will look in your buildings and your districts, so your meeting processes. So, what does it look like? What's the expectation? So when you have a new intervention specialist or a new teacher coming in, that they know, what does it look like, what a script would look like, what kind of information to provide the parent ahead of time. The layout. So when they're planning on doing this professional development, we have it broken down to 3 parts. It's the setting the stage, so everything you can do before this meeting happens. The during the meeting. So what are some things that you need to ensure when you're during the meeting, such as like having roles, making sure everybody introduces themselves. We like the idea of name tags with the position, so that if there's like a speech person in the IEP meeting, the parent knows who that is. And just because you said it in the beginning, when you go around doing the introductions, those first few minutes are really overwhelming for parents. So when they go back to be speaking, they know who that is. And then follow up, like if I'm the parent, who do I reach out to afterwards? And when are these things going to happen? And who's going to tell the teacher about these changes that occurred in this meeting? So we divided up those 3 sections during this professional development. So it goes all from what do you need to do before, to what's happening in the middle, and then how do you follow up? It is a self-guided professional development that is intended to have a facilitator within the building. So it's about a 30-minute video that has you stop every, sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's a little longer, to complete an activity. So as they start the video, it talks about the overview and what we want to do, but then it has them do like an inventory of what processes and procedures they're already doing, how they're working. And then it moves on to teach them a little bit more about what to think about and things they could consider. And then it has them kind of go back and reflect on how, what could they change about setting the stage. And it goes through that same process of inventorying your process, and then what should you adjust after each of those 3 sections of setting the stage, during the meeting, and following up. And then the very last thing is that we charge them with writing their own plan on how to improve this great environment, this welcoming environment for families. So this is the screenshot of the very first slide for the PowerPoint, for the video. So it's just great meetings for schools and families. It's got all our partnership names in there, and it's really talking about like our theme throughout is moving from a battleground to a middle ground. So it's not a competition between the families and the schools. It's really meeting together to choose the best path for the student. This is the facilitator guide. Each slide has what the facilitator should be doing if there is something for the facilitator. So you can see it starts on slide 4 because the first 3 are just introductions, but what materials they need if you're going to do it face-to-face or if you're doing it virtual. how long this activity should take, and then like what the key question is that they're answering. So the first slide 4 is activity 1, and then slide 4 is the share out from that. So what are you doing? How could you do that? We even have links to different like virtual platforms that would be useful if you're not in person, and paper charts are not there, like Google Docs, Lingo. We probably should add idea boards in there now too, because that was a great one this morning. But so we've got it laid out for them. We've got a link to a timer if they want to do a timer on their board. And then it just kind of walks the facilitator through every single thing that they need to do. It's got the articles linked into here, the videos, and then the handout sheets also. So even if the facilitator has no background in this or anything like that, they could still have this document and walk their group through it. And the next screenshot here is the worksheet. So this is really the main thing that the participants would take away. And you can see that it's their current practices for before, during, and after the meeting, and then ideas that they get from the PD or ideas they get from somebody else that they really think would be helpful. So if they hear us talking about, the name tags or a scripting out a practice phone call for new staff members, that they could write those down so that as they go through the PD, they're not forgetting those ideas when they get to the writing their plan part. So who is this intended for? I think, at least when I started on this, I was thinking special ed departments, front office staff, but as we started to work through it, really the whole staff probably could use it, because even though we focused on like IEP meetings, a 504 meeting definitely could fit into this. Even just like we're having trouble with your kid in class kind of meeting would be you make sure that you have these things set up, would be probably so much more welcoming and so much more productive than when it's me on one side of the table and you on the other, and we're not working together for a common solution. So BLTs definitely, because they're going to set the stage for the rest of the leadership team. Special ed departments, front office staff, administration, like they need to be a part of this too. I know we say that probably for every single PD we do, but if they walk in and out of the meeting 3 times and they're not really paying attention and they're not introducing themselves and they're not a part of that team, the parents realize that, they see that, they feel that as not being, that's not important for that administration. So having that conversation or being upfront, we know administrations are huge, busy, pulled in every direction. So, stay in the beginning, like, really important for me to hear this information. I have to step out for 10 minutes in the middle time. I'm going to make sure that I read the notes, like just stating that if it's an absolute must that you have to leave, but instead of just sneaking in and out or being on your phone the whole time or listening to the walkie, where we know they're running the building, but what is it that you could do just to be upfront about things instead of sneaking in and out, which they're not trying to be sneaky, but sometimes parents don't see that as being engaged. And then I think it'd be a great idea for the whole staff, in the first opening staff meeting of the year, talk about that, because first impressions are a big deal. And if the first time I go to the school, the secretary is just rude to me and I don't know what door to go into, and then there's nobody there to meet me, and I'm not 100% sure who I'm supposed to see, but I'm there for my IEP meeting for my student, I'm already frustrated. I'm already turned off. When I get to that meeting, it's going to take a whole lot more for me to be open and listening in an uncomfortable situation that would be if I felt warm and welcoming when I walked in. So that first impression is important. So anyone that would be involved in that first impression should definitely, take part in this PD. And also, we know that on the IEP team is more than the special ed department. So if the only people who are making this effort and understanding these protocols is the intervention specialist or the district rep, it won't go as far as if everybody is on board with creating this welcoming environment. And I think it'll change more than just meetings too. It'll change when they walk in for conferences or carnivals, or if that's the expectation of how you greet people, it'll make, a lasting ripple in other areas. So where we are in the process, we have completed the first video draft. It's been edited. I have several slides to redo. It is way harder than I thought it would be to record myself and like the take. So I've been working on it. It's almost done. It really, really is. But, I think I have like 5 slides I need to redo. Every time I do it, I stumble over a word and I'm like, I got to do it again. But we're very close. So the first draft is done and edited. They've seen it. The facilitator's guide is 90% done. I keep adding slides and changing things, so we have to just go over it one last time to make sure the slide numbers and things are okay, but it is pretty much finished. The activity is good to go, so I think the end is very much in sight. It's just a matter of retaking a few of the different slides and you know, putting the final touches on everything. Thank you guys. I can just take a second to read the chat. So people that are here is the group that has been working on this. It's been a tremendous group to work with, and we've done a good job of getting through all of this. There's been parts where we're like, wait, where are we? And had to keep going back and refocusing. And when the pandemic hit, we wanted to make sure that we were including the virtual part to it, because I hope that part stays as an option for families. I think it's really allowed access to a lot of people. So I want to give you the team members here, because they're all, we all can answer questions or get you this information. Hopefully it should be out in the next couple months. So you can pass it on to districts. They can use it at their own free will. I don't know if we've really talked about where we're going to host it or how that's going to look. I'm sure Tom's got it all figured out in his head. So that's all. Is there questions or things that I missed, team? I know Kim and Larissa were on here, and Tom. I don't know if Jackie's able to still join our group or not, but
thanks for sharing, Megan. You did a great job.
Good. Did I forget anything? Anything you want to add?
I don't think so. I think it was very thorough. Thank you.
I just want to add, Megan, that you have done a fabulous job on this.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been interesting. I've definitely heard my own voice more in this last couple months than I have ever wanted to in my life. So no, it's been fun. It really has been. Good. All right. Well, I think that's all we have. I'm not even sure I took our 10 minutes. I'm sorry, but I think that's it. Hopefully we'll get to send it to you guys soon.
Yes. Thank you, Megan, and thank you to other members of the group. I'm just going to ask if people do have questions coming in, if you could please use the chat. We only got 20 minutes left today. I want to make sure we get to the other two groups presentations. So please use the chat for questions. And thanks again, Megan and team. And we will be done soon.
Yes.
Up next, I'm going to keep moving right along. If we could have some updates from our PBIS work group we just met last week.
Okay. Hi, everybody. We met on the 17th. I think it was our second meeting of this group. It might be third, but seems like when we get together and look at stuff, we keep asking ourselves more questions. And so then we have to step back a little bit. We've been working with, the facilitator of this group is Patrick Cunningham. He's an OSU doctoral candidate working with the Ohio Family Engagement Center. And so he's been looking at this on a personal level with the work that he does. So it's been very nice to have him drive this. So our conversation looking at trauma-informed care in schools, specifically looking at those middle school and high school students and what that looks like and where family engagement would fall in that, because this population obviously is very different than your elementary and how you would interact with those families and everything. So we walked through it this last time, looking at the whys, the hows, the whats, and then, starting out very basic with people, just to bring them in case they're not really familiar with trauma-informed care, bringing it up to the point of where family engagement can begin to be interacted. And we got maybe halfway of everything we discussed last time. And we were going to start on the new slides that he had put together. And we came around the conversation of more research. And Meredith had brought into the discussion of the possibility of really taking a deeper dive, maybe through a white paper that would be used as a tool to supplement the presentation as well. So we all stepped back at that point, and he's going to bring more information at the next time that we meet. And so like we're at the very beginning of this, but it's been really interesting. And we have well, Meredith's on the group, Marla, Krista Allison, and Kim Adams are all a part of this group as well. So it'll probably take time. So it was sort of good to hear that the Great Meetings still is in the process of moving. And I know they've been working on it theirs for such a long time. So even though, you know, we always think you're going to finish something really quick and, oh, we'll get it out there and we'll go. It's nice that we have that reflective time to really step back and look a little bit and then get more voices on the table. And so that's where we're at. We're really at the very beginning of stages of this, but we'll keep you guys informed as we go along. I don't know if Krista's on still or something, if she wants to add into it.
No, Terry, you did great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. And I would also say, so as Meredith pointed out in the chat, the PBS work group has this new subgroup that's working on kind of trauma toolkits. The PBS work group is like our OG, like original, what, like this thing has been going on for a long time. They help publish our rubrics, been on the presentation trail for a long time, to the point that, you know, we've had members graduate, members retire, members move on to other things. So this has been such a great work group to be part of, and we're continuing to present on things like the rubric. As was pointed out, we're taking a kind of more really making sure that when you're in this realm of PBIS where there's so much stuff floating around there, it's so popular to really take it from real research, evidence-based level, and make sure that people are getting the most accurate information available, and also involving families in that process. So thanks to the group for that. And Meredith is tossing some stuff in there too. That's just a great group, been part of it for a long time. These are all great groups, sorry. Okay, last but certainly not least, another work group that is there's kind of two work groups at this point now. We got our remote learning work group. Could someone just give us a brief update on where we're at with that? Because we're pretty far into that project too.
Tom, I can start with our group, our 3-person group. So just as Tom mentioned, our work group kind of split into two to work on some video resources to kind of complement or be companions to existing PDFs. I was working with Terry and Kim on ours, and I'm going to just share my screen if I still can, just to give you guys an idea of the tool that we're working on here. So we selected, oh, hold on. Hit the wrong button. Just about to leave the meeting. There we go. Okay, so we are working on the family-centered instructional planning for remote learning tool and trying to create a brief 5-minute video to support this tool and helping educators use it. I think when we first started the conversations, oh gosh, back in mid-October, we were looking at the fact that sometimes when there's a document that says don't do this, people tend to not want to look at it. So we really wanted to focus on the do section and just kind of really highlight this document, kind of pinpoint 5 of the items related to, you know, things to do, but also just encouraging people not to shy away from reading the column about don't do this. So our group has put together, so far we're at the point of we've got the slides ready to go. We've got our script ready to go. We are just waiting to record. So that's where we are now with our project. But the 5 that we're going to focus on is less is more. We are also looking at the well-organized resources, provide a blend of synchronous and asynchronous learning, seek feedback from families, and then create a syllabus. And what's great with how we're going to do this is that we're not only focusing on the remote learning, but some of the resources and tips that we're sharing, I think, could apply across the board. It's not just, you know, specific to remote learning. So as we start, you know, hopefully returning back to in-classroom, these are some tips and tools that can continue to be used. So again, we'll highlight those 5. We'll share why they're important. and then offer some tips on how they can be used and how just some quick, easy things to think about to make sure that you're implementing these different types of family-centered planning tools. But Terry or Kim, do you have anything more to add?
Well, thanks.
Jen was a great taskmaster on this.
You guys, everyone, I really appreciate everything you guys contributed to this. It really helped bring it together.
Yes, and on the other side, I'll just knock it out really quick. I'm not sure, I don't see Heather in the room anymore, but Heather Wolf has been kind of leading the other half of this group. And as Jen mentioned, we kind of picked 2 resources and decided, like, let's make sure to do that we can do a deep dive video type thing with these. And the Search Institute actually at the beginning of the pandemic put out a kind of checklist, but also just idea guide around building developmental relationships during the COVID-19 crisis. And this is a really interesting document because it's kind of like the intersection of building empathy and effective communication. So it has tips for educators on how to do things like express care for students who aren't in the room or families who you can't be face to face with. How do you still kind of show those things when you're stuck in kind of a digital classroom? Also, how to continue to challenge growth in students and be able to communicate that to their families, and as well as provide support. Share power, we talk about that a lot in this group, right? Like really creating opportunity for all through representation and influence in teams and meetings like that at the school building, as well as continuing to expand possibilities for students and what's possible for them and their families. So we went through a very similar process. We have the slides done. We're a little further. We have some recordings done that have to be edited up, but similar type of thing, just trying to take a document and bring it to life a little bit that we think could be impactful for educators at this time. So hope to share those final products with you really soon, but absolutely. So that's our work groups. I'd like to pause now. We have just a couple minutes left in this meeting. Does anybody have any burning questions, things they want to share with the group, general kind of announcements before we get out of here?
I have one question. This is Kim. Where can we find the post-secondary, the transition and the family engagement modules? I know I keep hearing about them, but I can't think of where they are.
I can forward you the registration link. I got them from Lindsay and Kim, but they're like a whole sheet. Like you have to register for each session separately.
Okay, thanks, Megan.
They're on Zoom.
Yes, and the guide isn't published quite yet.
Oh.
We're doing the registration for the trainings that follow the guide right now. We've had some hiccups in communication land getting the final thing posted, but we're very close, and I really hope that you find it valuable. And this is a thing, been in this team with Amy and Jen and some other people here for, at this point, a couple years, really working on transitions, post-secondary transitions in this state and nationally. And this is a culmination of a couple years of work, but we're really going into it as something that's going to continue to improve, something that's going to continue to evolve with families and what we know that works about post-secondary transition. So really open to feedback when you do get to be into these sessions and stuff. I will also say that some of the stuff in the beginning of the trainings might be like already secondary or second or just like in your brain from being so engaged in these family and community engagement meetings. But we hope to kind of expand that thinking to anyone who's working in post-secondary transition. So hopefully that you can kind of serve as ambassadors of this kind of thinking afterwards, help follow up with your colleagues and keep those conversations going. So we really look forward to hearing your feedback as kind of other experts in the field on this as well. Okie dokie. The last thing that we have to do together today, if there's no other questions, feel free to share some questions or thoughts, is just take our exit survey. It'd be really helpful. It helps me and the team to make sure that we're meeting your needs as professionals and ongoing learners, and also to make sure that these meetings are worth your time. We know everyone's super busy, and we don't want to be spending time doing stuff that's not useful. So if you wouldn't mind doing that for us, it should only take about 5 minutes. It'll also get sent out with the follow-up email. But if you could take a couple of minutes to just do it now with the time that we have left, it'd be really helpful. I will be in the room for a couple minutes as we wrap up and stuff, if there's questions or any ideas floating around. But with that, I just want to say thank you so much for being here and being engaged today and continuing to continuing on this learning journey and family engagement journey with us. Thanks so much, and I hope everyone has a great day.